Good morning and welcome to the first session for the Science and Research track. We're going to ask people in the audience to hold side conversations down to a minimum since we are on remote for many observers. And we will begin now with our guest Pam Warkentin. Please begin.
Thanks, thank you. So I'm Pam Warkentin. I am in Canada. I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Association of Radon Scientists and Technologists, and then also the Canadian National Radon Proficiency Program. So I'm coming to you from Winnipeg, and happy Thanksgiving to those Canadians out there. But thanks so much for listening in. I'm going to share some of our initiatives. So I'm going to start off just to give you a highlight of some of our Canadian initiatives. So in the past few years, I've done a Canadian update for you at ARST. I've presented on some of the things, so I'm going to kind of skim through some of the information, but just remind you of some of the things I've talked about in the past. So I'm sure all of you know this, but just as a reminder, in Canada we use becquerels per meter cubed, and so the conversion there is 37 becquerels to 1 picocurie. And the other thing that's different in Canada is we test for long-term. So 91 days is our typical long-term test, 91 days or longer, or 3 months or longer. So that means that when we do testing, we are talking usually about alpha tracks or EPERMs, detectors which are doing long-term measurements. Another thing that, just to give you some structure to the Canadian context, our guideline level is 200 becquerels per meter cubed. And so, which is equal to, oops, that's not 1 picocurie, it's equal to 5.4 picocuries. So just to understand the difference there. So when we recommend, or when the government recommends that Canadians lower their levels, they're kind of focusing their attention on that 5.4 picocuries. And then the instruction is that when you do reduce levels, to reduce them to as low as possible, as low as achievable. And so though we do long-term testing, we have developed, there is a ton of crossover information from the US to Canada always, and so people are often interested in the short-term testing. So we have developed a short-term screening process that we call the real estate assessment process, that this helps us with some shorter screening for situations such as real estate. And in that context, we recommend doing a test of 4 days or more. That's sort of trying to stretch it out as long as we can in a relatively short perspective. And then we use a long-term measurement to follow up. And so I think last year maybe I talked a little bit more about our screening. No, it was in person. So 2 years ago, I talked a little bit more about our screening assessment process and can share that with anybody who's interested. Moving into the mitigation side. So just again, to give you some context of our mitigation, we do things differently in Canada. Our guidance and our standards allow us to do sidewall discharge. So you can see my little picture in the bottom, in the right there, with a mitigation system in the basement of a home. So we do allow the fans to be indoors. We do allow sidewall discharge, and we have clear guidance and standards for discharge clearances. And we also have clear guidance for pressure testing. So we do go in and do diagnostics and fan sizing. We include things in our diagnostics such as, or in our fan sizing, as pipe friction loss, differentiating between the pressure differences because of seasons. So they'll estimate the seasons depending on the climate zone that they're working in and such things. And we find that our systems are very efficient and are reducing levels quite efficiently. So a majority of our levels are getting down to below 50 becquerels, which is 1.35 picocuries. And so our systems are really effective at reducing levels to as low as possible. And we do have certified professionals across Canada. So our population is certainly smaller than the US, and we have a lot of remote areas. But we are able to get certified professionals into each province across Canada, with the exception of one province where we have a mitigation professional, but he works for the government. So right now he's just doing consulting, and we're working on getting more professionals in one of our remote provinces to be able to help homeowners. But we have developed a certification training program that is distance-based to help us get into some of those remote areas. Yeah, so I'm going to move in a little bit to some of the initiatives, just to update you on some of the initiatives that we're working on across Canada. So the Government of Canada has provided a grant, or has developed a program called the Take Action on Radon program. And this is an initiative that they fund, and the intention of it is to bring stakeholders together. And so this is another thing I think I've talked about in the past, that collaboration in Canada is really quite a positive way of radon awareness. So we have a number of groups that are working together on building radon awareness in their area. And so the Take Action on Radon project really is an initiative to provide resources and help those groups. One of the projects we do is called the 100 Test Kit Challenge, and we go into communities, smaller communities where the homeowners may not have accessibility to tests, and provide them with tests. And the goal of the program really is to raise awareness within the community. So we go in and we do put posters in the community and press releases. We work with a local community liaison to help us understand the context and what's best to communicate with their residents. And then we also provide them with an information session. So during COVID now, we've gone all online. So we do a specific webinar for their community and talk to them about radon. And then we provide them with a radon test kit and all the instructions. So the week after the webinar, they can go to a pickup location and pick up a test kit. And then because of our long-term testing, they now need to test for 3 months. So we call it a 100-day test, and that's just an easy thing for them to remember. And it makes sure that we get in at least the 3-month window. So we send them a series of emails reminding them to start their test. And then after the 100-day period, we have a group collection. So they drop off their detector to a single location, and then our community liaison ships the detectors in a box to the lab. And so this has been a really successful program in generating awareness in communities. So we're able to get tests accessibility to the participants. But the other thing that we found is that testing is a scary process for homeowners when they're just learning about it. And so if we can provide them with an opportunity to test with their community, then they don't feel like they're the only one in their town testing. And it also helps them talk about it, so they'll bump into each other in the community areas, and they'll talk about the things they learned on radon, or when the community collection is, they'll chit chat about it. And so we're definitely hearing about this, that they're reminding each other and talking about the fact that, oh yeah, did you set up your test? Yes, I set up my test, because it does take people time to remember to set it up, and then also in the end process to remember that they do have to drop it off. And again, they're kind of, oh yeah, remember it's coming up next week. Make sure you drop it off and those sorts of things. So they're chit-chatting in there as they bump into each other in these smaller towns. So it's been a really effective way of getting people testing and generating awareness. And the awareness, then we work with the municipality and the community and try and encourage them to continue it after we've gone, to do some awareness and keep the discussion going with radon. And so we've been able to provide tests to every province across the country, and those are the numbers of tests up till this year. And then we've got 30 communities this coming year that we'll be launching the program in. Another initiative that we have is Radon Reduction Sweepstakes. So this is a national initiative that any homeowner who has mitigated their home with a certified professional, for a C-NRPP professional. In the past, it's been 10 prizes of $1,000, and we've upped it so that we've got 16 prizes of $500 this year. And the real benefit of this project is that we get some really great stories. So we are able to communicate with the people winning and get a picture from them and get a story of why they tested, why they mitigated, and really help to share out those stories with others and encourage other homeowners with testing. And so we're just in the crossover period where we're announcing winners from last year and starting a new contest again for this coming year. Another initiative which has been really successful in Canada is called Tackle Radon. And so this is a great project, again, to be able to talk with homeowners about radon. So we have 4 of our CFL football players from 4 different teams talking to their fans about radon. They post on their social media channels, and they each have a photo shoot and then also a video that they talk about their experiences with radon. And so it's a really great program to reach a new audience that weren't really paying attention to radon. And so they've just launched their new program, and I know Todd Boss is probably in the audience, and David Innes, oh good. They could talk to you more, but this is a really great program to reach out and talk to a new audience in a new way about radon, and so we're super excited about it again this year. Another project that we have is to really try and focus on getting to smokers. We all know that smoking and radon is the most significant issue with respect to radon. And so we are working with the Canadian Cancer Society with their Smokers Helpline initiative. So to get information to the people who are talking to smokers about their health and answering their questions. And so we had a webinar where we trained the people answering the phone lines to talk about radon, and they have a specific initiative through the month of November where they are going to ask their people on the phone if they've heard about radon and see if they can get the conversation going. We have an opportunity where they can provide free test kits. So if somebody decides they want to quit, we can immediately get a test kit in their hand and help them with reducing their lung cancer exposure even greater. And so we've got a one-page infographic that is for the staff at the Cancer Society, and then we also have one-page information sheet for smokers. So it's a really great initiative, and we're excited about kicking that off this November or this fall. Another one of our projects is to provide free test kits for lung cancer families. So anybody who is connected with lung cancer, so either they themselves have been diagnosed with lung cancer or their family members can get a free radon test kit. And so we are, again, this is a project we tested in this last year with oncologists. So we went into some of the cancer centers, provided them with some free test kits, talked to them about radon, got them themselves to start engaging with testing their homes for radon, so that now they can start talking to their patients about their experiences. And now we're launching it with lung cancer patients. So we're pushing this out, and we're already seeing that stories coming in where we have, you know, a mom who was diagnosed with lung cancer and no smoking history, realizes that it's probably connected to her radon exposure, and immediately her first thoughts are for her children and her family members. So we have members from that, you know, family members that live across the country in different areas asking for radon test kits so that they can test their home as well. And so it's a really great way, obviously, to help ease the patient's mind, because they also want to protect their future generation, and also talking about radon. So we've got these family members talking about radon in their communities, because they don't all live in one area, they live across the country. All right, the other thing I thought I'd highlight is some of the resources that we have. So I know this has been something interesting for me, watching the toolkits that ARST has put together through the years, and I thought I'd share some of the toolkits that we've developed. So Health Canada has a poster, which is on the side of my screen here, and we've taken from their poster the look a little bit and developed postcards and bookmarks. And so we get these posters into libraries often, and so the bookmark was a really nice partner piece with it. And then we've also developed other things with radon on it. So we've got window clings, pins, so people could wear pins on their lapel, and all sorts of things that people can order, and we can provide them for radon. We also have the postcards and bookmarks in multiple languages. So we are moving into, we've got Tagalog, Korean, Punjabi, Chinese, and we're working on our Arabic resources as well. And then we also have images available. So this was a really great toolkit for media. We have Pixabay is a free sharing, so if you're aware of Shutterstock or iStock, it's the same idea, except all the images are free. And so people can go on to Pixabay, and these are open to anybody worldwide. You can go on to Pixabay, search on radon, and if you find our Take Action on Radon logo, click on that, and it should bring up this look of the page, and you can see all of the images, and these are free to download. So we're trying to get images of radon test kits in place so that they're good, clear, high-quality images that people can use for promotion. All right, so that's a few of our initiatives. I will just give you an update also to our project. So I did present in the past on our intercomparison project for the consumer-grade radon monitors. So we do have that published. It's open access, so you can go and read that if you haven't heard of it in the past. This project is ongoing, so we repeated again a second time. And in our second iteration of the project, we added a device. So we had, the first time we did a Pro Series 3, which isn't available anymore, so we did the Pro Series 4. And then we also added an Air Steward, which I believe is a radon device out of China, that we had heard some concerns about, and so we added it into our project. This is in the report, so we do calculations for accuracy and precision. The thing I'm focused on is the measurement error. So we provide a grade to each of the devices, and which is a combination calculation of the precision and accuracy.
Yeah, Pam, you have about 15 minutes in the whole session, just so you know.
So this is the grade summary for the first year devices. And so we purchased all new devices and did them again. So this is the grade summary for our second year devices. And then what we did was we put all the devices again a second time into the chamber. And we did start to see in the second iteration some slippage in the grades. And then you can see too the stats on the air steward. So it really isn't reading accurately. And so one thing that we've developed out of this is a quality assurance program. So we're seeing the libraries provide these detectors to a number of homeowners. They're free loan out. And so we've encouraged the libraries, and we've developed a program for the libraries to do a bit of a quality assurance program. So we have two methods. One is if they just have a couple, they can put them together, and if they're within 25 becquerels of the professional level monitor that they can get access to, that's sort of our window of quality assurance if the levels are reading under 100 becquerels. And then we have a calculation for them if the level is above 100 becquerels to do it based on a percentage. And so we have it also a methodology based on how many devices. So they may only have one or two that they're loaning out, or they may have 50. And so we also provide them a method for that. All right, and I'm going to hand it over to Brian.
And we're just going to go immediately to Brian Hanson's presentation. The questions will be then at the end for both speakers. Brian?
Thanks, Kevin. Good morning, everyone. Glad to see you here. And I just briefly want to, with the remainder of time, we want to introduce our consumer device comparison project background. About 3 years ago, we took over operation of the radon chamber that was previously located at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, and have operated that since and have achieved NRPP certification. We've been through a couple of intercomparisons with NERL as part of that. So we have been doing the National Radon Technical Assistance Program since 2009 by cooperative agreement with EPA. And in our renewal of that program, we did ask EPA to allow us to include in the work plan an evaluation of the consumer digital devices, with the goal being to mimic largely, in large part, the work being done in Canada. And EPA agreed. So our new agreement began July of this year. It's a 3-year agreement. So we're going to be starting the project here sometime, hopefully after the first of the year. I'm going to draw on that. But one of the very common questions that we get coming in on all of the hotlines that we answer directly for EPA, for the state of Kansas, are can we make decisions based on the results from the consumer devices? So with the exception of the earlier Ontario study, there's very little information out there that can be referenced by the state programs to give any kind of feedback, meaningful feedback to their clientele. So the function of this project, and following on the footsteps of Ontario, is to be able to provide to the public some degree of confidence in, or lack thereof, what have you, related to these devices. This was, and I can dwell on this was the first round of devices used in the Canadian study. So what we're looking at doing, we're picking up kind of where they left off and adding in a couple of the devices that they have also added in. But here's what we're kind of looking at going towards. Some concerns with the CRMs. They're obviously not approved for professional use. What does that imply in terms of making a mitigation decision, possibly using them? So there's no official public sector policy on CDRM use for this because of that lack of information. So the devices that we're looking to include in ours, we're looking at the Crentium Home and the Safety Siren 4. We're looking at the Wave, the Radon Eye RD200, and the EcoCube from EcoSense. and the Sun Radon Luft are the ones that I'm intending to get through ours. There are other ones out there. We intentionally left that air steward off the list because I couldn't even find a manufacturer when we went looking for it. And at that point, I'm not even going to talk about anything. Okay? So in terms of the devices, we're going to try to go with lots of 5 that are purchased blindly, exposure parameters. We're going to be doing ambient in the office, and then we'll be using the chamber for either for as close to 4 as I can get, and then either 8 or 20. We haven't quite decided on the third exposure line. For durations, we're going to go with either 7-day exposures, or we're going to be going with hourly, and we'll potentially run everything for a 7-day, and then maybe look at any differences between, say, the Pro Series 4 or the Crentium Home versus the faster reporting devices. Data collection is going to be very similar to that of the Canadian studies. And in terms of data analysis, we're going with the Canadian study design as well. And the goal is going to be to give that grade using the exact same metric so that we have comparable information across the borders. So not knowing that they had continued working, which is great because that gives us a lot more feedback to be able to compare. We'll have some information on some of these devices in a different chamber under some different environmental conditions, and that I think will help us to make some better ideas of what these things are telling us. Okay. So, in terms of who's going to be working on this, Bruce and I will obviously be doing the majority of this work. We are working with EPA on this project, so Tommy Bowles, our project officer, is going to be doing some of our review on this. And Bowser Morner is going to be providing for us some of our QA help. He's going to help make sure I don't make mistakes in my math, those types of fun things. The one thing that will somewhat delay this, I'm having 2 technical issues. One, Narrow is still not open for work in Montgomery, so none of the chambers have been able to do intercomparison since basically 2019. So I do not intend to start work until we get through our next EPA intercomparison, just for QA purposes. Mm-hmm. Second is more internal. A couple of the devices that we're looking to do run off wireless signal, and we have found that our chamber is functioning like a Faraday cage, and I'm having a really hard time keeping these things connected to the wireless. So I have a couple of internal technical challenges I got to get past. And with that, Pam and I wanted to open this up as much time as we could to questions for us on either side of the aisle from the audience.
Okay. Anyone who does have a question, especially for our online listeners, I do encourage you to come forward. You can use this microphone here. We don't have a roving mic. I'll start with, while people come up, we'll start with one quick question. First of all, I appreciate all this work. It's a question that has been on lots of people's minds. One question I guess had to do with a little bit about the duration issue, about over time drift and concerns about how these devices, and I know you're looking at some short-term kinds of issues here. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you have any plans for eventually, maybe not this round, but in the future, sort of taking a look at the same devices after they've been in use a year and seeing how they do.
Obviously it looks like Canada's already starting to do that, and it would be ideal for us to be able to follow through with that. So the short answer is I would like to do that if we can get it through the system. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we've been wondering too. So we've kept all these devices. It means a very crowded chamber when we're putting them into the chamber. But we have our year 1 and 2 devices that we have rerun already again, and then our plan is to do them again. And so we are going to conduct a year 3 or a year 4, I guess, technically project, where we will open it up now for companies to submit their device. So we'll continue to have an intercomparison project where we'll provide a summary report of the results. And the first 2 years for us was a test to sort of make sure that we felt really confident in our process, and we will continue it.
And I thank Canada for getting this set up, because I think the process they came up with is an extremely relevant one for this type of device, which is why I'm going to mimic it as closely as I possibly can.
And I joined in kind of late, but I really enjoyed the topic. When you said you're using year like 2 and 3 year devices, are those devices just sitting in the lab, or do they just sit in place? Or are you guys taking them home and testing them and using them? Because what I see in the field is like, oh, I let my neighbor borrow this one, I did this one, I did this one, and they're kind of getting moved all over the place, and that may, I don't know if that has a factor or not, but I'd be curious on that.
Yeah, we are too. And so the first year, between year 1 and year 2, they sat in the lab, and now they're sitting in a home. So they're just being used between intercomparisons. So I'm not necessarily keeping track of the data right now where they're sitting, but that was exactly kind of our purpose, was that they would be in use between comparisons, and then we'll package them up and ship them back to the chamber so that they then can go through an exposure again.
And I fully intend to do the same thing. I'm gonna, take them home this winter or next winter, compare them against other devices, charcoal kits, EPERMs, CRMs, and have the whole thing in my basement and see what all of that data looks like. So, yes.
Have a question about field testing. For those of us that aren't nuclear physicists in the field, is there a quick check to find out whether the test instrument we're using has been contaminated?
So that's sort of the last point that I had, was that, yeah, we've developed this. So we're seeing in Canada the libraries use these. So they're lending them out, and because we are focused on long-term testing, we're trying to encourage the libraries to loan them out for as long as they can. So I think a minimum is 4 weeks, and optimal is 6 or 9 weeks time where they're allowing homeowners to have the devices in their home for. And then they come back. So because we also are focused on winter testing here in Canada, because for the most part we're seeing higher levels in the winter than in the summer, because Canadians like to open their windows and let the fresh air in the summer, we're encouraging the libraries to pull them off the shelf and out of circulation during the summertime and set them up side by side and do an intercomparison along with a professional level device. And then, it's similar to what your QA program is for the CRMs. Do a calculation, figure out how much they're out. There's going to be some variability, but we've developed a calculation so that they can monitor and decide, is this one good or not? And then the next step then is that they talk to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer has been very supportive of this program. I think it's a really good advertising. The library program is a good advertising for the manufacturer whose devices are being used, and they certainly have been supportive of the libraries in them too.
I'm sorry, I don't want to hog the mic, but I'll throw this out. I've bought a dozen or more instruments over the past decade, and I check and see if they ever go to zero. If they never go to zero, how do I know I don't have contamination in the instrument? Maybe that's too simple, but as a Gomer Pyle solution, that was a test that I was using just to see if I ever saw the instrument going to zero.
So the check there is the ambient check in the office. Ambient in our office is around 1 up on our floor. So the relevant comparison there is the reported LLD from the manufacturer. If that answers that question.
Yeah, we're focused on trying to test what they are at the guideline level.
Sure. So I think the issue is we get, when we're mitigators, we go out and the instrument's been there for 5 years, like in the Pro Series. So the question is, how much background are they building up? And so talking to Phil about it, the background levels that he's measuring are very low, but then he's getting brand new instruments. So it would seem appropriate to try and expose this series of instruments to very high levels for as long as you can, and try and build up some background count. Let them then,
See how fast they drop.
and to see it. Well, you can see how fast, but really probably expose them and then see if they're building up background counts from lead 210 or whatever. But it's a thought to consider, because they're going to be left in place for 10 years. So. Whether that's they can feel good about them, and also how well they last.
Yeah, hopefully nobody's living with 10 years at high levels.
Well, I think thanks very much, and I appreciate our speakers.